had a desire to visit Rome. He said, I long to see you so that I may impart to you some spiritual gift to make you strong. That is, that you and I may be mutually encouraged by each other's faith. You see what Paul's mentality? He wanted to go to the Romans, impart some gifts unto them, so that after they had been strengthened, they too might strengthen him, that the two of us might benefit. This is what we are doing here. This is what we are doing here. This is not a one-man show. This is about us encouraging each other. It's about us building each other up. I do not want you to be unaware, brothers and sisters, that I planned many times to come to you, but have been prevented from doing so until now, in order that I may have a harvest among you, just as I have had among the other Gentiles. Romans 1:11-13. So Paul says, I wanted to come and see you guys, but there were obstacles. That's why you haven't seen me yet. Then, once he had covered that, he starts to lay down the foundation. He starts to lay down the ground to attack the subject. He writes in Romans 1:18-20, for the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness, because what may be known of God is manifest in them, for God has shown it to them. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Romans 1:18-20. Let me put some meat on the bone, as it were. So this passage, and you continue reading on, it will go to show you about people who have given themselves into a sensual lifestyle, where they are living according to whatever the senses want. Or they feast their eyes on whatever the eyes want to see. They give to the flesh whatever the flesh wants. They will do whatever, because they have taken God out of the equation. Now, Brock and I were having a conversation just before this meeting started, and we were talking about, years back. And yes, if we didn't know God, and there were excesses in our lives, but he was talking about some of the fact that we didn't go, beyond certain bounds. Now, within every human being, there is a knowledge of God. There is not a human being on earth who doesn't know God. Everybody. Now, they may try to put a name on it, and say that, oh, it's this or it's Krishna or what. But within everybody, there is a knowledge that God has put within him of himself. Do you know why it's necessary? Do you know why that is the case? Without that, God could not judge anybody. It were not possible for people to know God intuitively. I mean, when I say know him, I have to qualify that, because the Bible makes it clear we only really know God through Jesus Christ. But to know of him, if it was not possible for people to know of God, how could God judge people? People could just walk to him and say, you know what? Never heard one sermon about you. Never read the Bible. Didn't even know you existed. It will not take more than a second for God to reveal to that person that they do indeed know. I heard a story of a guy who was an atheist. And when he met, he became saved later, but when he met a believer who was trying to preach to him, and the believer said exactly what I just said, that everybody knows that there is a God. He said, no, 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 what you're saying is not true. He said, my parents were atheists, and their parents were also atheists, and they raised me to be, an atheist, and they never mentioned God in my house, and we just didn't, God just wasn't part of the equation. Now, after that conversation, I think I don't know whether he prayed or whether something, but in any case, the Lord revealed to him a time in his life When he was in Los Angeles, he was standing on a hill and he looked at the city and saw all the lights in the city and how beautiful it was, and the fact that all of these lights had to be put there by somebody. They didn't just appear. Then he looked up and he saw the stars. And the thought just came to him, just as those lights that you saw on earth were put there by somebody, so also the lights that you just seen up there were put there by somebody. And he went home. He was a child then. I don't remember that he was 8 or 12. He went home to his parents to tell them that there was a God. And the parents tried to beat that out of him. You see how a child without any help just reached that conclusion. God has put that in everybody. Everybody has an intuitive knowledge of the existence of God. Therefore, for a person to say that there is no God, he must go out of his way to quash that thing that God has put inside of him. He must suppress it. He must suppress it. And it's in suppressing it that somebody comes out and says, I'm an atheist. But with the wisdom of God and grace of God, you can easily expose them and show them that they cannot possibly be an atheist because their conduct, their behavior, everything shows that they believe that there's someone higher than them. Atheism is just an intellectual game. People in the depths of their heart don't believe that there is no God. Therefore, when you ignore the intuitive knowledge of God, which and what goes with it, the restraining hand of God stopping you from excesses. What you've done is you've resisted God. So the question of how can God, a loving God, judge people? That's what we're really dealing with here. How can a loving God judge people? Well, he gave you intuitive knowledge. Then he also tried to resist you by putting obstacles in your place. He gave you a conscience to guide you, to stop you from sinning against him. And you sidestepped all of that skillfully. Then you arrived in front of him on his throne and he said, I didn't know about your existence. How can you judge me? Will anybody ever stand before God and not be guilty? Your very mouth will refuse to open when you stand before him. Your mouth will say, hey, you want to talk, try it your own way. I am not talking in his presence because I know you are guilty. The arrogance with which you see people say, yeah, it will not be there. Your mouth will shut because you will see the evidence. And Paul wrote about this, writing to believers. Because I believe that the Holy Spirit did this on purpose. Because even in Paul's day, you could not take it for granted that the collection of the gathering of believers that was just made up of believers. There were people amongst the people who among the church who were on their journey to getting to know Christ. There were also people there who were pretending to be Christians. And God in his wisdom gave this message to Paul to write these people so people will know, hey, you're playing a dangerous game here. If you know the truth and you are suppressing the truth, you are playing a dangerous game here. Because from suppression, the next thing is wrath, the wrath of God. And Paul writes, for the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. Because what may be known of God is manifest where? In them. For God has shown it to them. For since the creation of the world, in other words, this is not a new concept. It's not because Christ came. Since the creation of the world, God has been revealing truth to people. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen by being understood by the things that are made. In other words, nature, the things that are made, nature. When you look at nature, you can see evidence of the Creator. You can see evidence of his eternal power and Godhead, in other words, the Trinity, so that they are without excuse. Nobody will have an excuse standing before God's throne. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, now this is the judgment. Judgment comes in different forms. One type of judgment is fire and brimstone. But another type of judgment, and it usually precedes the fire and brimstone, is God removing his hand, where he stops resisting you. He lets you do what you want to do, where your conscience stops protesting, where you do filthy things and you don't feel guilty. You don't feel like you've done anything wrong. When that happens, don't think that you are enjoying freedom. When you stop feeling guilty over sin, it means you have crossed the line. It's a dangerous place to be. And do you know what troubles me? Our generation is speeding towards this. People don't want anything that will remind them that they're doing something wrong. In the UK, they will arrest you for standing outside an abortion clinic and praying. A woman was arrested twice, not even outside the building, no, in the road somewhere. But it's within a certain perimeter. She was arrested. She was not praying out aloud. She was praying in her head. She was quiet there, and the police officers came and said, "Are you praying?" And she said, well, she was not going to lie. She said, if a Christian, why would she lie about praying? Oh, you're not supposed to be praying here, and arrested her. They took her to court. Judge said, "Can you provide evidence that she was praying?" Oh, she said she was praying. That was the most stupid kind of evidence that you can provide. She said she was praying. She can change her mind and say something else. Do you have any evidence that she was praying? And how do you define prayer in the law? They had not thought it through. The judge obviously threw the case out, and she won compensation of 12,000 or something like that. But why did I bring this thing up? Just to show you society saying, don't do anything that will remind us that we are doing something wrong. We want the free reign to be able to do whatever we want. Freedom! They don't know that it's God's mercy that restrains a person. And that the Christians that stand in your way and tell you don't do this, they are not your enemies, but they are your friends. But they are restraining you, helping to restrain you, so you don't end up in serious trouble, in hell. But that's the generation that we live in. And the reason why we've gotten to that level, to this position, is because gradually we got quieter, we got comfy, we got comfortable in the world. When you become comfortable in the world, do you know what will happen? You will conform, you will change. You will become like the world. You keep quiet. I have met Christians that took more pride in their nationality than in being Christians. Did you know that your number one identity is not Ghanaian, Nigerian, British, American? No, that's not your number one identity. Your number one identity is Christian. You belong to Christ. That's the number one identity. And that's the one identity that you're supposed to stand on, believe in, fight for. But instead, there are people who talk more about their nationality. That is sad. It means that you did not understand the riches of Christ. It means because how can you even compare the two things? Citizen of heaven, citizen of Great Britain. How can you even compare the two? I have met people who seemed keen, more keen to get me to conform to their culture than they were in getting me to conform to Christ. They meet you and they kind of want to mold you so you can become a little bit more like them, in line with their culture, than they are in getting you to become like Christ. Folks, I'm showing you why we are not effective, why we are not victorious, because our focus is not on becoming like Christ. Distractions have set in. Too many things have set in that are that they've taken over. We found side goals and we're pursuing those. Your victory lies in being like Jesus. The more you and I become like Jesus, the more victorious we will be. So anybody that tries to drag us in any other direction, they are not only diverting our attention from our ultimate goal, but they are also robbing us of power. They are robbing us of power. Paul wrote to the Romans. He said, look, this is what is happening. I've traveled through the Roman Empire, and this is what is happening. Men are casting away restraint. The restraining hand of God, they are casting it away. They are living the life of licentiousness. But then, we who are in the church, what are we doing? Are we giving ourselves entirely to Christ, to getting to know Christ, to living according to his mission? Let's continue. It says, and even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, you see how God works. You don't want to retain knowledge of himself. He will not resist you forever. If you want to to get a good picture of this thing, read Genesis chapter 6. We read Genesis chapter 6. The time before Noah's flood. The Bible says that the Lord said that he will not forever resist man or forever wrestle with mankind, seeing that they are flesh. When it says seeing that they are flesh, you're like, why is he saying that? What this, how do I put it? God is saying, I created this guy to be spirit. I put my spirit in him. He was supposed to be like me, but now he's merely flesh. I am trying to get something good out of this guy, but he has decided to just go down the path of flesh. So I'm giving him 120 years. After 120 years, it's over. That's how Noah's flood came about. He said, I will not resist you forever. I'm not playing this game indefinitely. I am drawing a line. That's how Noah's flood came. And here, Paul says, because they did not retain God in their knowledge, they were resisting God. God said he gave them over. What did he give them over? To a debased mind, depraved mind, a perverse mind. In other words, ideas that humans should not pursue, they would start pursuing. So look at the age that we live in and the perversion. There are organizations set up to lobby politicians, education ministers, to grant them permission to educate children in schools about sexuality. You know, it started with children need sex education. They need to be aware of the dangers. They need to understand. And people who didn't, Christians were always uncomfortable with that. But people who didn't have any moral compass, they didn't have, even maybe not use moral compass, but they didn't have God in their moral compass. Their morality was drawn up by themselves and society. So when society changes, their morality must also change. They didn't have an anchor. They said, well, okay, let's do it. But Christians were not comfortable because we knew that that's a door open. And if the person teaching the sex education is not God fearing, he can introduce things. Well, here we are. A few years down the line, we are reaping the results. Now, organization that's, if I want to work with children, anybody wants to work with children, here in this country, you must undergo something called DBS check, disclosure and barring service. Basically, you will undergo checks where they will find out whether you've broken the law somewhere, you've done some dodges, and even though you've never gone to prison before, you might be barred from working with children. But there are organizations of perverse people who have lobbied politicians to grant them access to teach children sex education. And what are they teaching children? A boy in the US took a book on sex education and read it to the board of governors with explicit description of the sexual act to 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, 8-year-olds. This is what we're teaching the children. Depraved minds educating our children. How did we get here? We got here because Christians became comfortable. We don't want any persecution. We don't want anybody to say anything against us. We want the world to love us. We want to be popular in the world. You will hear people talk about their church. Oh, we in our church, we don't do anything weird. No, we do those kind of tongues and, hearing voices, and we don't do any of that. Whom are you trying to appeal to? You are trying to appeal to the world. You want the world to pass you off as normal. Meanwhile, you are supposed to be educating the world about the things of God. This is where we've gotten ourselves in. So we have abdicated our duties as the leader of the world. Paul wrote to Timothy, he said, I'm writing to you that you may know how to conduct yourself in the church, which is the pillar of truth. The church is the pillar of truth. We are supposed to be the ones, the custodians of God's truth, and that we share with the world. And if they don't like it, tough. They want to persecute us tough, but the truth must be told. Yet we've become comfy. We prefer people to like us. Now, Jesus said, beware if everybody speaks highly of you. For so they did. The false prophets. They spoke highly of them and they stoned the true prophets. Who are we trying to resemble? Who are we trying to resemble? Paul continues. He says, God gave them over to a debased mind to do those things which are not fitting, being filled with all unrighteousness. In other words, all kinds of filth that you can think about. And by the way, in Paul's day, it was bad. You don't even want to. Because if you go and see some of the artifacts, the paintings, the sculptures, you're like, these guys were perverse. That nothing good was coming to their minds. And they were not hiding their sin. We're turning it into art for other people to see. And that is where we are heading. That's where we are heading. People parade filth and make it look like something good. That's where we are heading. In fact, that's where we are. But if we don't speak up, if we don't start to resist this, it will grow and take over. And our children will suffer. Our children will suffer. We had the benefit of going to schools where our teachers were God-fearing. I remember I used to have a teacher called Mr. Adumaku. I wonder where he is now. What a wonderful man. He made such an impact on us children at the age of 8, 9, that when he got sacked from the school, we never understood why he got sacked. We went and visited him. We walked like 5 miles and found him and visited him. He was lying in bed depressed. This man used to come and teach us the Bible. Yeah, I remember his Bibles, they colored everywhere, teaching us the word of God. We were little children. God-fearing man. I remember him coming to visit my mom at home, actually, to talk about how I was doing at school. People that cared. Those are not the teachers that we have today. Oh. Those are not the teachers that we have today. And think about the teachers that are going to be in existence in 30 years' time. They are teaching the children perversion now. What kind of adults do you think they're going to grow into? And what do you think they're going to be teaching the children of that day? It only gets worse unless we get out of our comfort zones and come out to teach the word of God, to preach the truth. We will face persecution, we will face resistance, we will face frowns. But it's a small price to pay to address the decay, which if we don't, we will pay. Our children will pay a big price. Paul writes, he says, sexual immorality, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, evil-mindedness. It says they are whisperers, backbiters, haters of God, violent, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things. I like that. Inventors of evil things. You know, there are so many ways you can say it. You can just let go and let your flesh please itself. But we're not talking about sitting down to devise something that you can use to do evil. The most obvious example being, the Nazi Germany, they sat down, scientists, engineers, they sat down and they planned how they were going to kill the Jews. Most people, when they think about Jews, they just killing. It's a cut off a head or what? No, methodical. They built a whole camp, built a furnace, built special showers, invented a gas that will kill people fast, transported people by train, goods train, packed like cattle from all over Europe, brought them to camps like Auschwitz, like places like that, just to kill them. Inventors of evil things. But it's happening as we speak. People are inventing evil schemes. I mean, what kind of mind sits down to plan how they can indoctrinate children and tell them that black is white and white is black? That's inventing evil. Disobedience to parents, undiscerning. In other words, they are not even able to discover that, hey, what you are doing is not right. You see, back in the day when I was growing up, there were not many people around that were, you would say they were born again Christians, but people were discerning. People were God fearing. Sunday would come, not everybody go to church. Or many people around and you look, they won't go to church. But they were God fearing. If you left your door unlocked, it wasn't a sign for people to walk into your house and start doing stuff. No, it wasn't. I remember, when we were growing up, we're playing football outside the house, and I saw my grandma coming, and there was a boy accompanying her. She had arrived from the village, and there was a boy accompanying her, carrying her luggage. Then he brought the luggage and say, and then she said thank you to him, and then off he ran off. He just saw my grandma coming, knew that this is, and then just went to help and just brought a different society. Ghanaian society was a different society. This was even in Accra, not to even mention the village. Today, even in the village, you won't get that kind of service. The nation is becoming more and more religious, more people in church than ever. But these values are disappearing. Undiscerning, Paul writes, untrustworthy. They are not reliable. You can't trust them with anything. Unloving, unforgiving, unmerciful. He says, who knowing the righteous judgment of God, that those who practice such things are deserving of death, not only do the same, but also approve of those who practice them. Romans 1:28-32. These are the things that God looks down at from heaven and thinks, what is going on? Is this the man that I created to be in my image, created in my image and in my likeness? What happened? What happened? And all of this is happening because what? They did not like to retain God in their knowledge. They didn't want anything to do with him. So he gave them up. He was tired of resisting them. He gave them up. Now, how can someone stand before God after all this and say, not fair? What would the basis be for saying not fair? That you should send me to hell? Hell was not created for humans. created for the devil and his angels. They don't get to choose to go to hell. They will go to hell. The humans get to choose. That is the mercy of God. After all this, if a man should decide, Lord, I'm sorry, that was both ignorant and foolish of me to have lived my life like this. Please forgive me. I surrender my life to you, Jesus. If a man shall pray like this to God, all of this will be forgiven. All of this will be forgotten, as if it never happened, because Jesus paid the price. Therefore, anybody that ends up in hell, do you know why he will end up there? He will end up because he refused. He refused the offer. It will not be because he didn't know.